Cybersecurity Planning for Security Policies. We live in an interconnected world where individuals as well as collective actions have the potential to result in inspiring goodness or tragic harm. The objective of information security is to protect each of us, our economy, our critical infrastructure, and our country from the harm that can result from inadvertent or intentional misuse, compromise, or destruction of information and information systems. The services provided by critical infrastructure sectors are the backbone of our nation's economy, security, and health. Critical infrastructure are the assets, systems, and networks, whether physical or virtual. What is a policy? The role of a policy is to provide direction and structure. Policies are the foundation of companies' operations, a society's rule of law, or a government's posture in the world. Without policies, we would live in a state of chaos and uncertainty. The impact of a policy can be positive or negative. The hallmark of a positive policy is one that supports endeavors, responds to a changing environment, and potentially creates a better world. The role of policy is to codify guiding principles, shape behavior, provide guidance to those who are tasked with making present and future decisions, and serve as an implementation roadmap. An information security policy is a directive that defines how the organization is going to protect its information assets and information systems, ensure compliance with legal and regulatory requirements, and maintain an environment that supports the guiding principles. It will also protect the integrity of the information and ensure the availability of information systems. An information security policy is a document that states how an organization plans to protect its tangible and intangible information assets. The components include an acceptable internet use policy, non-disclosure agreement, password policy, backup policy. You may ask, what is an information asset? Any information item, regardless of storage format, that represents value to the organization is considered an information asset. Assets have two forms, tangible and intangible. And tangible information assets are assets that are physical in nature and can be touched, and could include facilities, hardware, and software. Intangible includes things like your reputation, intellectual property, and intellectual capital. The goal of information security policies is to protect information, which results in the protection of the company's partners, and the company's clients. What are some of the successful policy characteristics? Well, they can be endorsed and has the policy which has the support of management. It is relevant to the organization, realistic and makes sense, attainable and can be successfully implemented, adaptable and can accommodate change, enforceable, which means it's mandatory, inclusive, that means it includes all relevant parties. Policies must be realistic and reflect the reality of the environment in which they will be implemented. Consider this situation. Company A discovers that users are writing down their passwords on sticky notes and putting the sticky notes on the underside of their keyboard. This is often discovered because multiple users share the same workstation. In response, management decides to implement a policy that prohibits employees from writing down their passwords. This means that leadership needs to understand why employees were writing down passwords, make employees aware of the dangers, provide alternative strategies or aids to remember passwords. Leadership must understand why employees were writing down their passwords, make them aware of dangers, provide alternative strategies, and if you engage constituents in policy development, acknowledge the challenges, provide appropriate training, and consistently enforce policies, then employees will be more likely to accept the changes. Policies must be attainable. They should only require what is possible. It is important to seek advice and input from key people in their job role to which the policies apply. If unattainable outcomes are expected, people are set up to fail. Policies must be adaptable. In order to thrive and grow, businesses must be open to changes in the market and willing to take measured risk. Innovators are hesitant to talk with security, compliance, or risk departments for fear that their ideas will immediately be discounted as contrary to policy or regulatory requirement. An adaptable information security policy recognizes that information security is not a static point in time endeavor, but rather an ongoing process designed to support the organizational mission. Policies are enforceable, which means that administrative, physical, or technical controls can be put in place to support the policy, that compliance can be measured, and if necessary, appropriate sanctions applied. There must be a fair way to determine if a policy was violated, which includes evaluating the organizational support of the policy. Policies must be inclusive. It is important to include external parties in our policy thought process. It used to be that organizations only had to be concerned about information and systems housed within their walls. That is no longer the case. Data and the systems that store and transmit and process it are now widely and globally distributed. Policies must be designed in such a way to incorporate third parties' information security policies. We must consider external threats such as unauthorized access, vulnerability exploits, intellectual property theft, and denial of service attacks. When complying with government policies, it is the responsibility of all businesses to understand what federal mandates they may fall under. Examples of federal mandates in the United States include HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. This is required by the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to develop regulations protecting the privacy and security of certain health information. GLBA, the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, defines a consumer as an individual who obtains from a financial institution financial products or services which are to be used primarily for personal, family, or household purposes, and also means the legal representative of such an individual. If necessary, organizations should retain expert third-party assistance to assure compliance. An information security policy lifecycle, regardless of whether a policy is based on guiding principles or regulatory requirements, its success depends in large part upon how the organization approaches the task of policy development. Collectively, this process is referred to as the policy lifecycle. Organizations that understand the lifecycle and take a structured approach will have a much better chance of success. An information security policy lifecycle will include developing it. That's planning, research, writing, vetting, approving, and authorizing. You would also be looking at publishing. This includes communications, how to disseminate and how to educate. Adopting, which includes implementing, monitoring, and enforcing the policy. And then review, solicit feedback, and reauthorize or retire the policy. To enforce an information security policy, you have to look at behavioral policies and technical policies. Behavioral policies maintain consistency and fairness in enforcing policies, whereas technical policies use built-in and third-party solutions to automate policy enforcement. For policy development, we should always remember that policies should support and be in agreement with relevant laws, obligations, and customs. Policies must be written for their intended audience. Because information security policies will affect an entire organization, they are inherently cross-departmental. All affected departments should have the opportunity to contribute to, review, and if necessary, challenge the policy before it is authorized. The authorization requires executive management or an equivalent authoritative body to agree to the policy. Policy publications include communication, widely distributed and available to their intended audience, and also recognizing that multiple factors contribute to an individual's decision to comply with a rule, policy, or law, including the chance of being caught, the reward for taking the risk, and the consequences. Creating a culture of compliance means that each department not only recognizes and understands the purpose of a policy, they also actively look for ways to champion the policy.